Your friends who share your big goals, they aren't actually helping you. They might even be secretly killing your future. And the worst part, you're paying them to do it with your own potential. Welcome back, everyone. If you're here, you're the kind of focused learner who really wants to understand the hidden mechanics behind success and failure. Not just the surface-level fluff, but the deep underlying patterns. Today's explainer tackles a fascinating and honestly pretty terrifying paradox, the psychological trap of loud ambition. Have you ever noticed that the exact moment you tell everyone about something huge you want to do, it suddenly becomes infinitely harder to actually get it done? It's a trap that catches almost all of us, and today we're going to break down exactly why your dreams are dying the second you speak them out loud.
Okay, let's dive into this. Our sources bring us a story about a young village man named Simon. But honestly, Simon could be any of us. He was brimming with loud ambition. Every single week, he had this brand new grand plan. One day, he was going to open the biggest shop in the village. The next week, he was going to master pottery. Then, build an incredible house. He was the classic visionary. But Simon had a fatal habit. Before he ever lifted a single finger to actually work, he'd walk right into the town square or the local tavern and shout his plans to absolutely anyone who would listen. And the villagers? Well, they clapped, they smiled, they told him how great he was going to be. Simon went to bed feeling immensely proud, riding this massive dopamine high. But the very next morning, when it was time to actually start working, he felt utterly exhausted. His energy was completely gone. Every time he announced his next big move, his brain was basically committing a psychological crime against him.
Simon was stuck in this brutal, repetitive psychological loop. Here's how it worked. First, he announces the dream. Second, he receives immediate public praise. Third, he loses absolutely all of his motivation. And fourth, he abandons the project entirely. This went on for years. The people in his village constantly celebrated his words, but his hands stayed entirely empty. He felt deeply ashamed and completely stuck, unable to understand why he always failed despite having so much initial passion and vision.
0. That is the stark, undeniable reality of Simon's situation. That is the exact number of projects Simon actually finished, despite receiving years and years of encouragement, applause, and social validation. 0 shops opened. 0 pots made. 0 houses built.
Section 1. The illusion of arrival and the psychology of premature praise. Let's look at why this happens.
So the crucial point is understanding what is actually happening in the brain here. To get to the bottom of this, we turn to a quiet, respected elder in Simon's village. Approaching a totally defeated Simon sitting heavily by a well, the elder reveals the secret. When you share your dreams too early, you feel proud. You feel as if you've already done the hard work. People's praise gives you this immediate, intoxicating rush of pleasure. It literally tricks your brain into feeling the exact satisfaction of success before the actual work has even begun. As far as your mind is concerned, it logs the goal as already achieved. Boom, done.
And because your brain thinks you've already won, your heart completely loses the fire required to keep going. By speaking the plan aloud, the crucial energy and gritty drive needed to actually execute the goal are completely extinguished by empty pride. You have essentially spent all your fuel on the announcement, leaving absolutely nothing in the tank for the actual journey.
Section 2. The secret of dark soil. 2 seeds, 2 totally different destinies.
To make this abstract psychology super concrete, the very next morning, the elder brings Simon into his garden and takes out 2 identical seeds. He takes the first seed, holds it high in the air, shows it to the local children, and proudly announces, "Look, soon this will become a beautiful tree." As the kids cheer, he places that seed right on a rock, completely out in the open. But the second seed? He hands it to Simon and tells him to bury it in a dark hole in the soil, cover it up, and keep it completely silent.
Weeks pass. That first seed, the one left out on the rock for everyone to applaud, it just dries up in the harsh sun, and eventually, birds come and steal the pieces. It never grows. But the second seed, buried silently in the dark earth, it sprouts into a strong, resilient plant. The elder looks right at Simon and delivers this profound truth. A seed needs silence to grow. It needs darkness. Dreams are incredibly fragile at their beginning. If you leave them out in the open and talk about them, they dry up. They literally must be hidden from the public eye to establish strong roots.
Section 3. Surviving the wilderness. This brings us to the macro framework of struggle.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that if we zoom out from Simon's village, this strict requirement for silent, unglamorous growth is actually a macro-level framework found in our most ancient texts. Our sources from the Bible Project highlight this recurring structural theme in the biblical narrative, the intense contrast between the lush garden of abundance and the harsh, empty wilderness. Usually we just think of a wilderness as a literal desert or maybe a place of punishment, right? But here it is defined as a mandatory, unglamorous phase of quiet struggle. It is a place of preparation. It is the dark soil. It's the exact phase we all desperately try to avoid by announcing our goals, but it is the one place where true endurance is actually built.
Think of it like this. The garden is the end goal. It represents abundance, success, and the ultimate connection to life. It's the finished house, the open shop. It's the big thing we all want to announce we are going to achieve. But the wilderness? That is the harsh reality of the work required to actually get there. It is dangerous, it's lonely, and it requires quiet, daily trust.
This actually brings up a really profound question from the Exodus story. When God leads the Israelites out of slavery, He doesn't take them straight to the promised garden land. He takes them the long way, through a harsh, dry wilderness. Why? Why not just skip straight to the victory lap? It perfectly mirrors human nature's deep desire to skip the struggle and go straight to the applause.
The answer is simple but tough to swallow. You cannot sustain success if you haven't been prepared by the struggle. The Israelites hadn't yet learned to trust the process. Throughout these ancient texts, characters like Moses, who fled into the desert, or Hagar, who escaped abuse, had to face the wilderness head-on. Skipping this silent, harsh preparation makes you fundamentally incapable of surviving the garden once you actually get there. You end up relying on your own fragile ego rather than the quiet, resilient strength forged in the dark.
The wilderness is above all a test. In it, a deceiver will always tempt you to seize power and success on your own terms, which is remarkably similar to the temptation to grab cheap praise by announcing a goal prematurely. Instead, you have to trust the process, day by day, in the dark. It is practice for becoming someone who can actually handle the garden. Even historical figures like Jesus spent 40 days fasting in the harsh wilderness, preparing in total silence before ever stepping out to announce a kingdom.
Section 4. The Power of Silent Work. Let's look at building the chair.
And this brilliantly illustrates our core concept when we bring this ancient macro framework back down to Simon's practical reality in the village. Armed with the elder's wisdom about the dark soil, Simon finally decides to enter his own personal wilderness. Here is your ultimate blueprint for achieving goals without self-sabotage. Look at the false path, loud ambition, speaking dreams for early praise, leaving the seed out on the rock to dry up, trying to skip straight to the garden. Now look at the true path, silent work, working in total secrecy, bearing the seed in the dark soil, and willingly embracing the harsh, quiet wilderness of preparation.
Simon chose the true path. He set one simple, concrete goal: to build a wooden chair. And this time, he told absolutely no one. For days, he worked quietly in a dusty corner of a barn after his regular job, with just raw wood and his own hands. He felt tired, he made tons of mistakes, but because he had no public pressure and no empty praise to coast on, he actually endured this harsh wilderness. Weeks passed and the chair took shape. And over the years, he simply repeated this silent process, eventually becoming a true master craftsman, building tables and stools in total secrecy until they were 100% finished.
When his neighbor finally walked by one morning and saw this beautiful, finished chair sitting out in front of Simon's house, they were completely shocked. "When did you make this? You never told anyone." Simon just smiled quietly. He had experienced a profound psychological shift. He no longer needed that cheap rush of empty pride. He found the deep, quiet, unbreakable satisfaction of building something real.
So now, I have to ask you directly, how many times have you announced a goal only to immediately lose the energy to pursue it? Think about it. How many projects have you discarded because you traded the actual gritty work for the cheap dopamine hit of premature applause?
Let's move to and see how this builds into actionable steps for your own life, derived straight from the elder's wisdom and those ancient wilderness texts. First, when you get a big idea, you have to pause that overwhelming urge to tell everyone. Just stop. Second, keep your dreams close and hidden. Third, let that seed grow in the dark soil of your own unseen effort where no one can steal its energy. And fourth, willingly embrace the quiet wilderness of daily, unglamorous practice.
This is the absolute core synthesis of our entire explainer today. When you speak about your plans, you give away your power. You let the reactions of others replace your own gritty effort. True legacy requires protecting your ambition from the destructive, drying light of premature attention. The world does not need to know what you are building.
It only needs to see what you have built.
I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. Think about your biggest, most ambitious goal right now. Got it? Okay, what greatness could you actually achieve if you stopped talking about it, embraced the absolute silence of the wilderness, and finally committed to building it entirely in the dark? Protect your seeds, let your results speak for themselves, and we'll see you in the next explainer.